Let's go. Oh, we back. Episode 10. Um, we've been talking off camera like we tend to do beforehand, because that's what we do. We build. And so we was building a little bit and we said, let's start it. But the topic for today is gonna be a risk taking, and how does that benefit anyone, right? Now, some people associate risk taking with like being dangerous, being reckless, um, uh, being spontaneous, being manic, right? Those are all like what people associate risk with. But what we've been talking about and what we associate risk with is taking a chance on yourself, taking a chance on an opportunity. And so off camera, we were getting deep into it. And when we look back at our lives, when we look back even at our childhood, our adolescence, teenage years, young adulthood life, we realized every time we took a risk, most of the time it paid off. Like for instance, when we were like a girl, right? And then we didn't know, we were like nervous to talk to her or to try and ask her out at a young age. When we didn't, when we fell into the fear and didn't do it, we missed an opportunity. We saw like the next guy get her, right? Like, dang, man, I with my girl. And then we all like, we missed out. But then what happens when the next time we go, you know what, I like this girl. And you go, I'm scared, but I'm gonna go up there, shout, I'm like, hey, you. And then so you know she's your girlfriend, right? A week later. The risk paid off. It's been other times in our life that we've seen risk pay off when we took a chance on ourselves and said, you know what, despite me wanting to hold on to this cash or whatever it was versus putting it into something, we went ahead and put it into something and saw returns. So what we come to understand is if you take a risk in the right venues, it will pay off most of the majority of the time. So there's nothing to be afraid of. Like technically, risk or not being reckless, that's just being reckless. But a risk is saying, you know what? I'm gonna not stay stagnant.
Right.
I'm gonna move forward and see where that step takes me. Right. And so we encourage everybody to go ahead and make some intelligent risks
Mm-hmm.
and see how that benefits your life. And if you can start off small, right? You can start off
Mm-hmm.
small, but take those little risks and see where that takes you. See if there's benefits to it. And if you see, then try another risk and try a third risk and a fourth risk. And this what's going to happen. And see, maybe 90%, 80% of the time, those risks pay off wonderfully. And you're grateful that you made that decision. I know I've seen it. I've seen it many times. When I invest in the stock market, when I first invested in the stock market, I realized, of course, I didn't know everything about it. I was a novice, but I took risks, and the risk paid off.
Didn't the stock
I
market
wish I had took bigger risk earlier on, because then that would have paid off even more.
didn't the stock market give you the capital to put down on your home that you live in now?
Yes, and it also gave me the capital to take care of emergency things that happen, which is one thing that most people don't tell you when you're buying a home, especially if you're not. Listen, not even especially if you buy a home that's 50 years old, 60 years old, 20 years old, 10 years old, brand newly built, right? You're gonna have a problem. Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen where you're gonna need funds. Whether the house is brand newly, and hey, you can vouch for that, right? Your house was brand newly built before you moved in, and what happened soon after? Some things went wrong.
Yeah.
My house is not brand new built, right? I moved in and some things went wrong. And I'm like, whoa. So I'm grateful that I invested in the stock market and I got a great return because then I had the capital to go ahead and take care of that. Right? I could took some of that money out, use my credit card, and then took and paid it back with that cash, right? Um, so it helped me in several ways taking those risks. And I think um, most people tell you, hey, put your money away, put it in a bank, little small 1% return, 1.5 return. No, you're not gonna get anywhere. You're gonna stay in the same place. But it's to take a risk. And that's why me and A started these video making, because it was taking a risk.
Right.
Like I did not imagine talking to the world or talking to people about the things that we talk about. It was just like our conversation, right? Someone else said to me and joke, and kind of being serious, like, Lou, you should start like a church or something. Like, you're so silly. But they were saying the things that we were having conversations about should be heard by other people. And even then, when they said that, I was like, stop it.
Right.
But when you came to me, you was like, yo, hey brother, I think we should go ahead and start a podcast, turn our conversations into something that others can hear. It was something that I was like, we do be having some deep conversations, like, and I don't mean deep as in, like, I'm not like patting ourselves on our shoulders, but I mean we do have conversations, uplift one another. And I feel like other people need to hear that and experience that and maybe can benefit from. And so that was a risk for me,
Right. Right.
that was a risk for me because I'm a private person. Like, I'm a very private person. I'm like, I speak to people privately, and, you know, um, to do this in front of, like, well, right now ain't that many people, but to do this with the world being able to see it is very is a risk for me.
When you came up with when we were speaking the other day and you said we should speak about taking risks, I have a question for you, and I feel like maybe people may think they know this, but it's one thing to think you know it and then to go, no, this is some real stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So a question I would love to ask you is, why right now, within the time frame that we're in, do people need to start taking risks? Like, it's not something that we should consider. It's something that we have to do. Like, why should people start thinking about taking calculated risk right now?
Good. That's a great question, because it's the most it's fertile ground for risk taking, right?
Oh,
It's
man.
fertile ground. It's like the economy appears to be doing badly. The US dollar is taking a dip, interest rates are up, cost of living is up. Um, it just seems like a bad place to be, right?
Mhm.
Excuse me. But when things like that happen, it is the time to jump in there. Because what happens is when things flip back, returns that ones are gonna see is gonna be unbelievable. People are gonna be looking back like, man, that was a great time. I want another one of those. Like, you're gonna be asking for another one of these type of time frames. Listen, the economy is not doing well, which means to invest in these companies is very cheap for most of them. And I don't mean cheap as in worthless. I mean inexpensive. So what one would do is look for the best value for their dollar in shopping for these companies. Now that takes some due diligence, or talking to people, or talking to someone that have done their due diligence and then taking their advice. But this is the most fertile time to be able to just jump in and invest, right? Because when things flip, oh, it's gonna be so beautiful. And so this is a time for families to get together, for
Right.
spouses to get together and start planning
Right.
on ways of capitalizing, on this opportunity that we see in this economy today. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. Nothing to be afraid of. Right? And that sounds so strange when
Right.
sounds so cliche when it go, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. But that's true. Like the fears will cause you to be afraid, but the situation is not frightening at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to be afraid of. So take your spouse, take your family members, your cousins, and start investing. Start investing in yourself
Right.
because what's going to happen is it's going to pay off. Take the risks now because in the next 1 to 2 to 5 years, you're gonna be grateful. You're gonna be so happy that you made that. You've taken that risk. That's my recommendation.
So what about and I know we were speaking about this off camera, but this needs to be heard on camera. Like I was sharing with you, I was once in that place that okay, I knew I wanted to take a risk, but I'm freaking fearful. How do I how do I do that? Like how do I put my mind in the place of basic steps to make me go, okay, it's not as frightful as I thought it was to start taking a risk. Like what would you say are two things that we can go in our mind to make ourselves go, I'm gonna dive right in.
Well, one is if you stay where you are, and you said this, right? If you stay where you are, you're gonna remain where you've been. So hey, you don't want to be where you at, right? You want to be somewhere different, somewhere better. You have to not be where you at. That means you have to change. You have to move forward. You got to do something different. So if you don't want to remain in that situation, then you got to go ahead and take that risk and move forward. It's a risk moving. Listen, we take risks every day unbeknownst to ourselves, right? Take a risk hopping in your car, driving to work. You take a risk crossing the street. It's risk we take all the time, right? But if we didn't take those risks unbeknownst to us, we wouldn't move. We wouldn't go anywhere. You wouldn't even get to work. You wouldn't get to school. You wouldn't get home because you'd just be stagnant. And so if you want to change your situation, you gotta take that first step and move forward. That's one. Two, make informed decisions. So
Mm,
think, excuse me, woo,
bless you.
thank you. Think about what it is that you want to do, right? First, start, put it here. Think about what you want to do. And then when you figure that out, you start to just do Google searches of how you can attain that. You know what I mean? Like, how can you attain what you want? My personal thing is this: sometimes you got to do what you don't want to do to gain some of the capital to do what you want to do, right? And it's proven to work. Elon Musk is a perfect example. Like, he didn't
Whether you
just,
like them or not.
yeah, whether you like him or not, he's a perfect example of how to get what you want by doing something else that you didn't really maybe want to even do, right? Look at him now, the richest man in the world, Tesla, you know, the Boring Company, and all these other things, right? But he was down with what was it? PayPal. Him and his buddies had PayPal and then sold it. And with the PayPal money, he was able to go ahead into other ventures that led him into Tesla, that led him to Tesla. So sometimes you might have to just do something to gain some of the capital to get you to do what you really want to do, right? If you really want to travel the world and help people, you can't do that today. So you might have to go ahead,
Mm,
start a nonprofit, right? Gain some donations and take little steps to get to where you want to go. And so that's how I look at it. I've done it. You know what I mean? Like I took my work income when I don't know how much I was making. I was making like I think I was making $36,000 a year, right? And I took a little 100 here, 200 there, and put it in companies. A little 200 here to 200 there, and I was putting them into a company. First, I was just doing like I was being silly, not silly, but I wasn't being as smart as I could have been, right? But then I started putting my money into Apple, Ford Motor Company, um, a couple other companies, but I put a lot of money into Apple. And then what ended up happening is I think my Apple return before I sold it was like 98% return on my Apple investment. 98%. Apple had my portfolio at because of the 98%, it had my portfolio in general at like an 80 something percent return. And I was like, man, I made a great decision in investing in Apple at that particular time. And then I started investing in Tesla, which I wish I invested in Tesla earlier on. But when I invested in Tesla, I believe I went to like 60, I was like 60% return or something like that on my Tesla. When other people was like at right now, I think some people who invest in Tesla early on are like at 3,000%. I wish I had started early. I wish I had got Tesla then, but hey, you know, that's how it is sometimes. If I had took the risk, it would have paid off even more lovely. So that's how I look at it. You know, I was able to invest, which gave me the ability to do certain things that I wanted to do after, and I will continue to invest because this is the fertile time. This is the time to invest. This is the time. You know, you're gonna see 2 to 3, maybe 4 years from now. If you pay attention to the stock market, the things that are low will be high, and you will be you. It will be like, man, I should have invested in that, and that. But that's how I would do it. That's how I'll get from being ambivalent or stuck to moving. And definitely it all starts here. One of our previous videos, you go back and look at the mind. That's where everything starts. It starts here, you know. But that's I think I hope what I've said can help you move into that risk taking mentality. And then what's gonna happen is once you see the risk paying off, you kind of become a fanatic. You become a fanatic and you start to research this and that and put money in here and invest in there, and then you become a fanatic, and then you start to see, hey, these really aren't like risk. These aren't dangerous movements. These are actually smart movements that pay off, that allow you to do other things, you know. So if you have the chance and opportunity, start taking the risk today, and you will see it pay.
And if I could throw something in there, like just to piggyback exactly off of what you just said, taking a risk is like building a muscle. Like once
It
you
is.
start lifting weights, you increase the weights. And we're not just talking about increasing weight, we're talking about increasing value that you have,
Mm-hmm.
equity for Lewis and myself. Like Lewis and I were speaking off camera. When he decided to improve his credit and did, he could have easily said, let me just get some high dollar credit cards and stay where I am. No, this man took his family on his back and said, now let me go and get equity with the risk that I took invested in stocks. Not saying that if he didn't invest in stocks, he wouldn't have equity, but him investing in stocks and having that extra surplus of money helped him put a down payment, no problem. Took the money right out of his stocks, and now he has equity for his daughter and his mom. So we're speaking about this stuff because we've obtained some results that we feel the general public should know. So there can be more people on YouTube speaking about stuff like this. I could have stayed in New York City. I was pretty comfortable there, but I thought about, like I was telling or sharing with Lewis off camera, the possibilities that I would have. Now, I'm very fortunate to have equity in other opportunities, but if it wasn't for my best friend here, I probably would have stayed in a bad situation But him speaking to me, and he didn't give me advice when I was in the dumps. He said, I'll give you some perspective, but that perspective was all I needed. So equity came from myself, and then it's like we passed the buck, but it's a reciprocation effect. So
Yes, yes, yes. So I recommend when you're taking these risks, right? If you already have a close friend, a partner, y'all go ahead and bounce things off each other.
right,
And when we're talking about risk, we're not just talking about financial risk. We're talking
right,
about risk in life, risk in love.
right.
Take a risk in love. Don't let that love pass you by. We're talking about risk in all these matters, right? Because sometimes you might think, well, if I do this and I might mess this up, and yo, if that, yo, take the risk. Take the risk. That person will make you not think about things, other things you were thinking about, right? You're not even gonna think about that. Just like if you go ahead and take the risk financially and you become a millionaire in 5 years, you're not gonna be thinking about the situations you missed out before you took the risk to become a millionaire. And so, risk in finance, risk in love, risk in relationships. Listen, take those risks. Now, I'm not talking about danger. I'm not talking about harming yourself. I'm talking about the risk that can pay off lovely and make you a happier, healthier human being. And so that's what we're talking about.
Right.
And of course we need friends on our side. We need friends, a companion, somebody, because we can do it on our own. It's definitely you can do things on your own. But to make it, it's difficult on your own.
Mm.
You know, A has helped me dramatically in my life, you know. And so like when we speak in private, you know, every so often I remind him, I'm like, hey bro, if it wasn't for you, I definitely I would not be where I am right now. You know, I may have had money that I invested and then it gave me nice return and my bank account looking nice. My credit would have still been subpar. You know, he gave me the tools and the education that I needed to understand of how to make my credit better. I did not know, I did not understand credit at all. Right. And so once I understood it and I utilized it, it paid off. You can have cash, but credit is better.
Hmm.
And having both is the best. Having both is the best. Cash and credit. Because you got the credit, you got the cash, and you can do almost anything you want to do. So please heed the advice that we're giving you. You're gonna be grateful. Because I know I am. I know A is. We talk all the time, you know. Um, but that's all I gotta say. I hope, you know, it resonate with you guys. And, you know, leave a comment, any questions, you know, and we'll respond.
It's definitely.
All right. Peace.